Consider the Chatushloki of the Bhagavad Gita. So, text 9. Matchita matgata prana bodhayanta parasparam katayantascha mam nityang tushanti cha ramanti cha. The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are surrendered to me, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss, enlightening one another and conversing about me. 610. Teshang satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami bhudi yogam tam yena mam upayanti te. To those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. Text 11. Teshang evanukampartam aham agyanajam tamaha nashayamyatma bhavasto jnana deepena bhasvata. Out of compassion for them, I, dwelling in their hearts, destroy with a shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. So we turn back to text 1. The Supreme Lord said, my dear friend, mighty armed Arjuna, listen again to my supreme word, which I shall impart to you for your benefit and which will give you great joy. So because Arjuna is his dear friend, Krishna spontaneously wants to reveal more and more to him. Right? Because Arjuna is his friend, and you see that Arjuna is eager to hear more, then Krishna wants to speak more. It's very natural. If someone's not envious of you, the more you want to reveal. So Krishna is a person. And Arjuna's qualification is that he is freed from all envy. And he has more, and the more we're freed from envy, the more we have love for Krishna. So that's the principle by which his friendship operates under. So if we're also, to the degree that we're less envious of Krishna, to that more we'll be able to understand him and naturally relish when we hear about Krishna, instead of becoming envious that he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the word paramang is explained thus by Parashara Muni, one who is full in 6 opulences, who has full strength, full fame, wealth, knowledge, beauty, and renunciation, is paramam, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. While Krishna was present on this earth, he displayed all 6 opulences. Therefore, great sages like Parashara Muni have accepted Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now Krishna is instructing Arjuna in more confidential knowledge of his opulences and his work. Previously, beginning with the 7th chapter, the Lord already explained his different energies and how they are acting. Now in this chapter, he explains his specific opulences to Arjuna. So previously, he explained in a vague way, in a general way, But here, specific means he's giving some practical examples so that Arjuna knows how exactly should we think of Krishna's opulences. Through these examples, give us an idea. They illustrate a little bit of God's opulence. In the previous chapter, he has clearly explained his different entities to establish devotion in firm conviction. Again, in this chapter, he tells Arjuna about his manifestations and various opulences. This is like any conversation. It's like, if someone's not so serious, you might be a little vague with them, or if someone's not so favorable to you, you might just tell them a little bit, it covers everything, but it's not really all the details. But here, Krishna is being very specific, Arjuna, right? Because Krishna, he won't become envious or bored if I tell him, this is an example of my happiness. It's like we tell a story to someone, we might tell someone just very little because they're not so interested. But someone else who's really eager to hear, you might explain all the little details. It's like someone, how was it when you were gone? It was good. And then someone else, I might say, it was good because this, right? It's different. Again, in this chapter, he tells Arjuna about his manifestation and various opulences. The more one hears about the Supreme God, the more one becomes fixed in devotional service. One should always hear about the Lord in the association of devotees. That will enhance one's devotional service. Discourses in the society of devotees can take place only among those who are really anxious to be in Krishna conscious. Others cannot take part in such discourses. The Lord clearly tells Arjuna that because he is very dear to him, for his benefit, such discourses are taking place. It's like Prabhupada would say that, in most theology, they say God is great, but how great is he? They can't really explain much beyond he's great. What does that mean? So here, because the devotees are actually interested, they don't have enough time to discuss all how he's great, all his different qualities and different examples. So even in this simple book, Bhagavad Gita, simple but very deep, we have more information than most other religious texts. Because devotees are actually interested, they want to know. These are not boring chapters. You can meditate on these different opulences of the Lord, as will be described later in the chapter, not today. But they give us appreciation for how powerful Krishna is. So he shows by different examples in this world. So, reading on. Neither the host of demigods nor the great sages know my origin, for in every respect I am the source of the demigods and the sages. As stated in the Brahma Samhita, Lord Krishna is the Supreme Lord. No one is greater than him, and he is the cause of all causes. Here is also stated by the Lord personally that he is the cause of the demigods and sages. Even the demigods and great sages cannot understand Krishna. They can understand neither his name nor his personality. So what is the position of the so-called scholars of this tiny planet? No one can understand why the Supreme God comes to earth as an ordinary human being and executes such commonplace and yet wonderful activities. One should know then that scholarship is not the qualification necessary to understand Krishna. By our brain power, it's not possible. Then how can we know? Then we have to go to Krishna. But who goes to Krishna? Who depends on Krishna? Only a devotee will want to know. But everyone else is simply speculating of the absolute truth. And despite the cause of all causes being beyond their existence, it happened long before they came into existence. But everyone, it's like this earth was here before, everything was here before, but we're so puffed up and we want to figure everything out ourselves. We want to figure out what's the system, to exploit this world or live in this world. But the devotee simply depends on God in every regard for the truth. So it's not within the power of the great demigods or great sages. Even Lord Brahma, he makes this similar point when Krishna reveals his opulences. He realizes, wow, others may say they understand Krishna, but I don't understand. But then he speaks so many nice verses, and you may say, how do you reconcile this? Because it seems like he understands, but the idea is that understanding comes from Krishna. So it's not, the jiva doesn't have that power. So by saying I can't understand, it's just admitting that this power to understand does not come from me. It comes from Krishna. So it's not a contradiction. Even the demigods and the great sages have tried to understand Krishna by their mental speculation, and they have failed to do so. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is clearly said that even the great demigods are not able to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They can speculate to the limits of their imperfect senses and can reach the opposite conclusion of impersonalism, of something not manifested by the three qualities of material nature. Or they can imagine something by mental speculation, but it is not possible to understand Krishna by such foolish speculation. There's many examples that you can prove this to people practically, that they can't understand God by their own speculation. No, even though they may try. Just like one time I was sitting in a room and there was a nice, wonderful painting there of Krishna. And I told the guy who came to visit, I was in India, and I was like, do you know who painted? You see this amazing photo? Who took this photo? And they were like bewildered. They were like, why am I asking this? I was like, do you know who took this photo? I was like, can you figure it out? Can you take a guess? Try to figure it out. If I gave you the rest of the day to figure it out, would you be able to figure it out? And then I was like, see, even this simple photo, you can't even know who did it unless what? Someone tells you, some information is given to you. But here, you think you know everything about God already. Isn't this foolishness? So they can practically experience that they don't have the actual power. Because something so simple, like who took this painting or who made this photo, they can't figure it out by their own speculative power. Some information is needed. That's the idea. Here the Lord indirectly says that if anyone wants to know the absolute truth, here I am present as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I am the Supreme. One should know this. Although one cannot understand the inconceivable Lord who is personally present, he nonetheless exists. We can actually understand Krishna, who is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge, simply by studying his words in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. So how can we understand? Jai. So he reveals, that's the idea. The impersonal Brahman can be conceived by persons who are already in the inferior energy of the Lord, but the personality of Godhead cannot be conceived unless one is in the transcendental position. So, on our own, we can come up with something opposite to this world, some negative, it's not this, it's not that. But what is it? That we cannot conclude without some information being given to us. This is not in our power. We can imagine, we can hear something and try to put things together, just like, but that's called, what they call it in other traditions. What is it that they call it? Idol worship. When you imagine a God outside of the scriptures, it's not actually God. Even if you add any small speculation, you may say Krishna actually likes to eat, I don't know, meat or something. Like he enjoys eating meat. That's not Krishna. Even if it looks like him, does all the pastimes of Krishna. But then you imagine him to eat meat or something, and you say, well, Krishna likes to eat meat. So this is not within your power so you cannot add anything to devotional service. You cannot add anything to Krishna. He's already complete and perfect. He's already who he is. We just simply have to accept the process and who he is. So better give Krishna what he wants. And that's revealed through the scriptures and the acharyas. Because most men cannot understand Krishna in his actual situation, out of his causeless mercy, he descends to show favor to such speculators. Yet, despite the Supreme Lord's uncommon activities, these speculators, due to contamination in the material energy, still think that the impersonal Brahman is supreme. Only the devotees who are fully surrendered unto the Supreme Lord can understand, by the grace of the Supreme Personality, that he is Krishna. So this faith, Krishna, actually is a gift from Krishna. Just like when people want some material desires and they worship demigods, Krishna invokes that faith in the heart of that living entity also. So similarly, he makes our faith strong in him. We may hear about Krishna, but there's different degrees of how much faith someone has in Krishna when he hears his words. So the more we want to surrender to Krishna and develop a relationship with him and not be envious towards him, then we'll have more faith in him. The devotees of the Lord do not bother about the impersonal Brahman conception of God. Their faith and devotion bring them to surrender immediately unto the Supreme Lord, and out of causeless mercy of Krishna, they can understand Krishna. No one else can understand him, so even great sages agree. What is Atma? What is the Supreme? It is he whom we have to worship. So we see, although we hear about the impersonal Brahman, but because we know this is just a little aspect of Krishna, devotees are more focused on Krishna, the person, not his impersonal features. Because you can't have a relationship with his impersonal features. You can't render any service in the impersonal Brahman. So for devotee, this is very insignificant aspect of Krishna. Yo mam ajamanadim cha. Okay, I read this already. Let's read the English. He who knows me as the unborn, as the beginningless, as the Supreme Lord of all worlds, he undiluted among men is freed from all sins. So I want to get to the Chatur Shloki, so I'm going to speed it up. So these are different aspects of Krishna. He's unborn, beginningless, and the Supreme Lord of all worlds. So many people may see Krishna or hear about Krishna, but they think he is something manifested temporarily, just for some pastime, but there's something beyond Krishna, or they calculate him as something temporary, because when he comes, he transforms into an ordinary child. I think Prabhupada mentions this in his purport. So it can be very bewildering. Even for those who worship Vishnu, actually, it can be very bewildering, that this incarnation of Krishna, because he seems like an ordinary child, So, but he's not. And how do we know that? How can you know that this incarnation of God is actually Ete cham shakala pumsa Krishna stupagam swayam? You have to hear from the acharyas, you have to hear from the scriptures, or else even that can be very bewildering. So the idea is that we have to be freed in every regard from any tinges of speculation, of thinking we can know, or taking some credit for our realizations. So better we just stick to the lotus feet of the previous acharyas and question anything that's not confirmed by the Guru, Sadhu, and Shastras. That should be our method. I like how Prabhupada makes some, let me see if I can find the point in this. Here, Prabhupada makes the point. The conception that there are things auspicious and inauspicious in the material world is more or less a mental concoction, because there is nothing auspicious in the material world. Everything is inauspicious because the material mask is inauspicious. We simply imagine it to be auspicious. Real auspiciousness depends on activities in Krishna consciousness, in full devotion and service. So, unless we come to the platform of Krishna consciousness in full devotion, then whatever we do will simply be sinful. As the verse is saying, he is undiluted among men, meaning he's free from all conceptions of this world. That is what's allowing us to continue sinful. We are adopting the wrong conceptions, and therefore we perform sinful activities. So that's what the source of lust is: illusion from ignorance, is the platform by which we perform so many sinful activities. This is explained in the Nectar Devotion, in that verse, Kleshagni Shubhada Moksha Lagutakrit. This, in the Moksha Lagutakrit, there's not Moksha Lagutakrit, was it Kleshagni actually? In the Kleshagni, the Krishna consciousness destroys all sinful activities. And it said the root of all sinful is this avidya. From avidya, then we perform sinful activities, we get some reaction, seeds are born and those seeds fructify, and we enjoy those fruits as suffering, really. So what's that verse? I can't remember right now. Anyways. So we got all this karma that we have to suffer and experience because of ignorance, ultimately. So when we remove ignorance, then completely, then no more sinful activities. But what is that ignorance? Is really knowing of Krishna and his position and our relation to him. We have to, in every regard, understand that whatever we think we can keep separately from Krishna, or that we think we know without the scriptures, just like we may think, I have some realization, I haven't found it yet in the scriptures. Whatever we're holding onto might be a misconception. So we have to be very cautious, thinking we know something without Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. But the living is so puffed up that, he's always trying to be God in some way by thinking he has some realization better than all the previous acharyas, that he can come up with some new way of doing things. in Krishna consciousness. So this is the disease of the soul. He's holding on to his attachments, and mostly they're misconceptions. And therefore we perform sinful activities. So when we hear freed from all sins, that's what it means. We're freed from all ignorance, because that's the root of all sins. So intelligence, knowledge, freedom from doubt and delusion, forgiveness, truthfulness, self-control and calmness, pleasure and pain, birth, death, fear, fearlessness, non-violence, equanimity, satisfaction, austerity, charity, fame, and infamy are created by me alone. So Prabhupada, the first line of this purport, really nice line. Every time I read it, it's amazing. The different qualities of the living entities, be they good or bad, are all created by Krishna. And they are described here. And this, you never hear before. At least I never heard it before. It was to the point. There's a concept of Satan, he's a source of evil. But then here Krishna says, even so-called bad qualities, they come from Krishna. And this is good to know, because, they may think there's some guy Krishna struggling against some evil or something. This is some strange concept that, evil is in this world and God doesn't know what to do about it. Why is there evil? It's like the question of evil is a big topic in most theological spheres. They can't properly answer. But we boldly say Krishna made it that way, actually. It's like that for a reason. So we're not too bewildered by the suffering in this world. In fact, when we speak of birth, death, old age and disease, fearless suffering, we're actually indirectly glorifying Krishna. So you may be wondering why Prabhupada is talking so much about birth, death, old age, and disease. Doesn't he just want to talk about Krishna? But he is talking about Krishna. When he's talking about birth, death, old age, and disease, he's glorifying Krishna, actually, by speaking about these things. And devotees are relishing, actually, this. Talking about birth, death, and how this material is suffering. They're thinking of Krishna the entire time, actually, when they're speaking of these things. But the Sahajas only want to talk about Krishna's pastimes, only. They don't want to talk about the miseries of this world, but that's also Krishna. On the transcendental platform, these things become relishable. In this world, when we talk about these things, it becomes a source of anxiety, because we're operating under the dualities. But devotee, on the transcendental platform, even these so-called bad things, ultimately is relishable. It's coming from Krishna. He knows why Krishna created this world. So he's not bewildered. He's not disturbed by disturbance. Just like my personal experience being around the Krishna conscious movement is people are afraid of suffering. Even devotees, they want to avoid all disturbances and suffering or being uncomfortable. But this is mundane, actually. This is not spiritual, to avoid all suffering. Because on the spiritual platform, even bad is good. In the material world, bad is bad and good is bad. It's all miserable. But when you come to the transcendental platform, we don't want to necessarily avoid difficulties or avoid bad things or avoid speaking of negative so-called, we don't want to talk about the bad stuff, birth, death, old age, and disease. We just want to talk about Krishna Lila. But this is mundane, actually. So this is like the voidists who want to just avoid things, delete some aspect of Krishna. This is also Krishna. So we should know this clearly. So this is purport, you can read it for clarification of these different qualities. We won't go into that today. The 7 great sages, and before them the 4 other great sages and the Manus, progenitors of mankind, are born out of my mind, and all creatures in these planets descend from them. So here Krishna is continuing, being very specific how this universe was manifested and how the population is manifested. It's through these sages. that, and this is explained even more details in which book? Srimad Bhagavatam. So because devotees, they want to know more and more about Krishna, and then Krishna reveals a little bit more and more. So we should try to know Krishna as much as he reveals, that much we should try to aspire to know. Beyond that, there's no need to waste time trying to imagine beyond that. He already revealed so much. Let's try to understand what he gave first. How many times people ask questions that is like, can you first learn what's in the books with just asking questions that have nothing to do with Krishna, what Krishna has spoken about? So we should learn to be satisfied with that. And trust me, there's plenty. There's so much to know, not enough time. So let's continue. He who knows the truth, in truth, this glory and power of mine engages in unalloyed devotional service. Of this, there is no doubt. Because if you think someone else is God or someone else gets the glory, then your attention might go to that person. But Krishna is the real hero in general, just period. That's it. Full stop. Krishna is the real hero. He deserves all glory, all credit in every regard for everything that we see around us, everything that we experience ultimately. And even our devotional progress that we make, despite we having to put full endeavor, full effort, ultimately all glory goes to him. Devotee gives him all glories. So, not that we may do something or we may do some great devotional service. You may think, I did something by my own strength. No, that attitude will take us away from the mercy that Krishna is giving us. But devotee applies full efforts and gives Krishna all credit. So, I'll read the first line Prabhupada makes. The highest summit of spiritual perfection is knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Actually, the next line is also very important. Unless one is firmly convinced of the different opulences of the Supreme Lord, he cannot engage in devotional service. And I said, and Prabhupada makes the point in the next line also, they don't know in detail how God is great. So this whole chapter, Vibhuti Yoga, or not Vibhuti Yoga, but the opulence of the Absolute, is to convince our mind of really how Krishna is actually God. He's really the source of everything and inspires us to serve him and to depend on him. That's what this 10th chapter does. So we read it and we go, wow, it should inspire respect naturally by meditating on his different opulences. Anything that's great immediately commands respect. It doesn't, that's the nature of greatness. That's a characteristic. By its own greatness, it attracts respect. So when we think of Krishna's great majestic powers and how he's actually the source of this great universe and everything that's in it, and all the demigods and sages, they all depend on him. There's no one more powerful than him. Whatever opulence or knowledge, strength, intelligence you see, it's all just little, as we will see in the end. Krishna concludes, what is the use? I can go on eternally talking about all my opulence. It's just a little fragment of my opulence, actually. Just to give you an idea, a small indication. So this should endear us towards Krishna, this dasya bhav, that I should respect God. The platform of respect. And this is actually good to remember, because when we're chanting the holy names, all this applies to the holy name. This holy name of Krishna is non-different from Krishna. Is it Namna Chintamani Krishna's Chaitanya Rasavigaha? So this holy name is non-different from Krishna. So if we don't approach the holy name with respect and reverence in the initial stages, then we'll simply sleep, we'll be indifferent when we make offenses to the holy names. We won't care. So if we don't have enough service attitude, we don't know enough how great Krishna is. Enough respect for Krishna. We have to meditate on these different qualities. Wow, I'm actually in the presence of the all-powerful, almighty Supreme Personality who at any moment can destroy you, can finish you. It's like, there's a saying, one of my godbrother makes a joke about, because if you try to finish chanting, chanting will finish you, you know, because if you have that attitude of just finish the holy name, finish chanting, that attitude is, that whole conception is a bad conception. It will finish your devotion, actually, this idea. You complete your rounds, but the idea that I'm going to finish it, get it out of my, the whole attitude involved in that concept is not good. But if we were with Krishna, we don't ever want to finish chanting. We complete our rounds, but we're not satisfied just chanting 16 rounds. But at our stage, that's all we can do for the most part on most days. But Prabhupada said chanting 16 rounds on beats and unlimited rounds off the beat. So you can keep the holy name going throughout the different day, every second, anytime you get a gap, or you can run in your mind, If you make a habit of chanting out loud, then naturally in your mind, you'll also develop the habit of chanting in your mind as well. So let's go through the Chatur Shloki. We have 9 minutes, so I'll go through them fast. So the 8th verse is speaking about Sambandha Gyan. Sambandha means knowledge of our relationship with Krishna, Krishna's position, our relationship to him, and our relationship to this material world in respect. It's all in respects to Krishna. So this is also a definition of God. Someone says, who is God? You can say, Aham sarvasya prabhavo matta sarvam pravadate iti matva bhajante mam bhuda bhava samanvitaha. So this is a nice definition of God. He is the source of everything spiritual. Whatever is spiritual or beyond this world, whatever is living, is conscious, is coming from Krishna. This is God. And everything material, all these things that are changing around this material world and all its complexity, it's all coming from him. He is the source, the first cause. And everyone has to agree that there has to be a first cause, unless they have no common sense. If they don't have no common sense, you give them laddu and you say, have a nice day, okay? Don't talk to them. They don't have any common sense. They think it all happened by chance. Where there's no example of this at all, of something happening by chance, or there was nothing, and from nothing an explosion came. So if they don't have common sense, you say, here's a laddu, or here's some prasadam, you have a nice day. We're not going to have a conversation. But if you at least can agree to this point that there is a source, now what is that source? Then we can discuss. You claim it's some light, okay. You claim it's nothing, okay. Let's discuss. Is there some validity to your statement? But here we say Krishna, he is that source of all spiritual material worlds. Everything emanates from him. This is pravartate. That's another meaning. Emanates is coming from him, but it's also moving by him. He's moving these things. Right? Nothing can move without Krishna's will. Pravartate emanates and emanates into action. That's what it means. It moves by Krishna's will. Even us, spiritual things, that's without Krishna's will, we can't even exist. If he closes his eyes, everything will cease to exist if he wants. The wise who know this perfectly means without a doubt. Is Krishna God? Is Krishna am I actually dependent on him? They actually engage in devotional service and they worship me with all their hearts. So you can say, he is who, the cause of all causes. What is the definition of God? Is he who is worshipped by everyone with all their hearts, and they know him as the cause of all causes. Why else would so many people worship Krishna if he wasn't real, if they weren't getting some kind of reciprocation? Is it millions and millions of people around the world are worshiping God, even though they don't have full knowledge of God, still to the degree that they understand this quality of God, how their lives are fully dependent on him. That much what's the word? Reverence they have towards this personality. to the degree that they feel and they experience, wow, I'm so dependent on Krishna. And the same goes for the holy names of Krishna. I always go back to the holy name because that's our process in Kali Yuga of associating with God. That's our main process. If we realize and experience how dependent we are on chanting Hare Krishna, then how much more eagerly we would chant, right? When the going gets tough, the tough gets going. We chant more intensely. It's not that when disturbance comes, we give up the holy name. We should take more shelter. If it gets tough chanting, then that means we should take more shelter, right? Sometimes like it's tough. But then you remember, it's like, this is evidence how I am actually dependent on the holy name. That thought comes, and that will keep you chanting, fixed and intensely chanting. So next two verses are talking about abhideya, which is the process of devotional service. Once we understand Krishna is that cause of all causes, that whom should be worshipped, then we should worship him. How do we do that? Krishna explains, to those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give the understanding by which they come to me. I think I skipped something. Yeah, I did. The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are surrendered to me, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss, enlightening one another and conversing about me. So our thoughts, machita. So this is referring to the mind, the thoughts. What is the mind? Just a whole bunch of thoughts, just popping up all the time. Based on our desires, we have so many thoughts popping up. For millions of lives, we've desired the wrong things. So naturally, we have so many nonsense thoughts just coming up. But for devotees, they start thinking about Krishna. Now that's revolutionary. Just the idea, if your mind is just even thinking of serving Krishna, just that thought comes, that is revolutionary, because the living entity generally does not think of God or serving him in any regard. But if you just have that thought of serving Krishna, and then if you have more of those thoughts spontaneously of how to serve Krishna according to the scriptures, not that you imagine something like, I had thought I want to do this for Krishna. It's like, okay, yeah, but that's a disturbance in society of actual devotees. But if you're just thinking something and you think, oh yeah, this is great, I'm going to serve Krishna in this way, but it's like, you didn't check with Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. It's like, okay, it's a disturbance. Of course, not a full disturbance, because Kubja thought of serving Krishna in her own way, because she didn't know any better. She was a prostitute. That's all she knew. So she thought of, and Krishna accepted. But once the idea is that pastime, she got rectified from her. She got purified of this way of doing things, and she became pure devotee after Krishna went back and purified her from her lust of serving Krishna in her own way. That's lust means also that. When we serve Krishna in our own way, that's due to lust. So he purified that. And then naturally, if one becomes purified, he wants to serve Krishna in Krishna's way. That's more advanced. I think Prabhupada makes that point in the purport. Let's see if I can pull it up. It's either this purport or the next purport. Yeah, it's in the next purport. But anyways, let's keep breaking down this verse. So in devotee association, we derive great satisfaction in serving Krishna, planning different services together and how to please Krishna. And devotees depend on Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra to do this. And they derive great satisfaction and bliss doing this. We need a devotee association, actually, to relish Krishna conscious. It's required. We need each other to serve Krishna in a grand way. It'd be pretty difficult to serve Krishna by yourself. But if we come together in a community of devotees, then we can together do great service. And therefore, Prabhupada, for those who live near the community, Prabhupada just wanted devotees to serve the deity in the temple, not that everyone has their own deities, because then it becomes like splayed, the attention becomes splayed. The cooperation becomes splayed, because very easy to say, I'll just stay home and do my own thing. It's like, why go to the temple? In other words, why cooperate with others in serving Krishna? That's what they're saying. In the name of devotion, they're saying, let me keep my own deity. But Prabhupada said, if you're living near the temple, you should not keep your own deities, actually. You should do service, work as a community. You're going to do more together, more opulent offerings, more nice festivals for Krishna if we work together. But, grihastas have a trap, because they can stay away from the temple and avoid so-called difficulties. There's no difficulties in Krishna consciousness. Everything is auspicious. The so-called difficulties is opportunity for us to make progress, but we generally see it not. So we try to run away from difficulties because we think, I'm supposed to be happy, right? Only happy. But we have mundane definition of happiness. One who's actually experiencing transcendental bliss can be blissful even through the difficulties. Prabhupada said, this is a moment of ecstasy. When his disciples, Prabhupada, you don't look so blissful in this photo. He said, you have no idea what bliss or happiness is. You don't know what happiness is. You have mundane conception of happiness. Happiness means just only like this. Sadhu means he's always big smile on his face, big beard or whatever. But on the spiritual platform, all emotions are full of bliss. Sadness, dejection, depression, anger. It all satisfy the soul. But we only have conception of duality in this world. We don't know what on the spiritual platform, it's all equal. It's all for the sake of expanding the enjoyment. Anandam pudivardhanam. This rasa is, different varieties are there, different flavors are there. That's why variety exists in the spiritual world. So the variety that's experienced in the spiritual is not like the variety we experience here. The varieties here is subject to duality. Here, miserable means miserable. It doesn't exist without happiness. We have no conception of miserality. There's dualities always. But you can't apply that. When you try to think of spiritual life, you can't apply that to that. I keep bringing this point because it's such a big anartha, actually, in devotees' hearts, I see. Always avoiding difficulties. But where is the difficulty, Prabhupada said? Here, actually, it is in this purport. I renew it. In the preliminary stage of devotional service, they relish the transcendental pleasure from the service itself. And in the mature stage, they're actually situated in love of God. So, Prabhupada is talking about different level of devotees. Here, they're attached to the activity because the first stage, these are referring to who? These are like demigods, actually. The demigods are like on this platform. They're more attached to what they want to do than what Krishna wants. They serve Krishna in a particular way. They want to serve Krishna in this world. So they're doing some service. But these are more like demigods. In the mature stage, they're actually situated in love of God. This is more like Vaikuntha platform. There's another stage which is not spoken on. This is in the residence of Vrindavan. Again, they become attached to service, but this is different than the original attachment to the service. Here, they're attached for their own sake to the service. They like the service independently of Krishna to some degree. But on a higher platform, one is attached to service more than Krishna. It means they're attached to pleasing Krishna more than his association, more than anything else. Even staying in this material world, they don't care if Krishna is actually pleased. Not to the activity itself. Whatever it is, Krishna, whatever is pleasing to Krishna, that's what they're attached to. So they're attached to service more from that perspective, because they know this is what Krishna wants me to do. They're attached to that. Not to this activity, this specific activity. I'm so attached to this. That's like the demigods. They're attached to their position, to some service. But in love of God, then one is attached to pleasing Krishna. He loves Krishna. But then more than that, he's attached to the service to Krishna. He's willing to give up even Krishna for that. Actually, let me see. I'm way over time. As always. Okay. I'll just read the last two statements. Those who are constant devoted and worship me with love, I give the understanding by which they come to me. This is again more abhidheya, Krishna reciprocating as we're serving him. Then the last one is prayojana, which means the goal or the gift that we get out of performing devotional service. Krishna, out of compassion for them, I dwelling in the hearts, destroy with a shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. So there's two darkness. One, first stage, Krishna starts to reveal our faults, right? In beginning devotional service, you think everybody else is nonsense. Then we realize, oh, I'm the nonsense person. Actually, I have so many things I need to work on. So we see who we actually are instead of thinking we're pure devotee. We actually have work to do. And then eventually Krishna will reveal your swarup, your real form, so by which you can serve him. Actually, if we really understand, we'll know we're Krishnera Nityadas. That's our real form. But anyways, we'll end there. I have something more to say, but for the sake of brevity and time, we'll end there. Any quick questions or comments? Is a question or comment? Okay. You want to say? I just repeat. Yeah. Yeah, like I said, the first stage, we're clueless, is we don't know who we are even now. As a conditioned soul, we don't know our faults, our bad habits and qualities. So Krishna will gradually show you what you're doing wrong in devotional service. That's on our stage. That's what he's revealing. And if we don't work on it, we just ignore it, just waiting for some magic or something. Like, okay, yeah, he's going to reveal my swarup. It's like, he's revealing to you that you're falling asleep all the time and you're not doing anything about it. And you want your swarup. You're demanding more realization. It's like, first understand the first thing you're doing wrong, who you are now. And that's real mercy. To know what we have to work on. Everybody has realization in this. For sure. If you perform any devotional service, you know exactly what you have to do next. And what anarthas you have and what you're struggling with. And if you don't apply efforts to do it, then you'll be stuck on that platform for years. And you won't be stuck, actually. You'll fall down at some point. There's no stuck. There's backwards. Krishna's not so patient. Of course, if you fall down, it's for your benefit, but you'll delay the process. You don't have to, like Maharaj said, I think, His Holiness Dhanava Goswami, you don't have to fall down. It's not like everybody has, it's not part of the process. It's not necessarily intrinsic part of the process that you have to fall down from your platform. You can just keep going forward. Go ahead.
On this point of going forward and everything in Krishna consciousness, how can we become fixed up in Krishna consciousness as soon as possible?
Well, I would start by this. You can introspect, write down your qualities, and make some plan to endeavor to rectify it. Yeah, our qualities are seen through actions. So we can rectify our actions, then we rectify, that quality would no longer be there. How do you know someone has a quality? Is by their actions. It's practical. So we see what we're doing, our behaviors, our thought process. Usually our behaviors affect our thought process actually also. So we can rectify if we're actually introspective. We see Krishna is revealing to you actually if you're honest. You're turning a blind eye to what he's telling you. Year after year, you'll be doing the same thing, struggling with the same thing. And you'll be like, when is Krishna going to show me my Swarup? Like, that's going to help you at your stage. It's not going to help you. It's going to destroy you. He's giving you exactly what you can handle, but you're not taking it. I'm not speaking just to you, I'm speaking to myself. So, we can end there? Unless someone else? No? Okay. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhivaya vacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavyo namo namaha. Thank you, devotees, for allowing me to come back and be in your presence. It's only by you guys' prayers that I was able to